scriptures Srila Prabhupada would quote from. There is a verse, Tashtit Tatra Tishtara Narada Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta, where Krishna tells, my devotees come together to speak about me, to chant my glories. I am there. Wherever Krishna is, that is a holy place. Mad Bhakta Puja Vyadika. And Krishna tells us that he is more pleased, he is even more present when from our hearts, with deep appreciation, we speak the glories of those devotees who love him, who have surrendered their hearts, their lives for his pleasure. Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Vedas. It's the culmination of all the knowledge, of all the scriptures, for all times. The Paramhamsa Samhita culminates with the 10th canto. But the first 9 cantos prepare our consciousness so that we can actually connect to the 10th canto properly. And most all the lessons are stories about Krishna's devotees. The Pandavas, Dhruva, Prahlad, Ambarish, the Prachetas, Rantidev, Shukadev, Parikshit. Because we learn how to love Krishna through the examples of great devotees. Srila Prabhupada quoted a Bengali saying that the mother teaches the daughter-in-law by instructing the daughter. Now, when I first heard that, I was a brahmachari, and I was thinking, I don't know what that has to do with me. But then Srila Prabhupada explained, and it had everything to do with every one of us. He said, in the traditional Bengali household, the daughter-in-law comes to live with the mother of her husband. And because she's just coming there, it's very different. It's a different house, and she's obviously quite nervous. And if the mother-in-law corrects her, she'll really be devastated. So even though the daughter does everything so nicely, the mother-in-law will instruct the daughter in front of the daughter-in-law so that the daughter-in-law learns everything. Does that make sense? I was hoping you would say that. So Prabhupada said, Krishna teaches the world through the example of his devotees. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses for you and me. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was Krishna himself in the mood of Sri Radha's compassionate love, he cited Mahajano Yena Gadasa Bandha. You cannot understand Krishna or the perfection of life even by studying of so many Vedas. It is only possible by following in the footsteps of great souls. Because great personalities have taken the essence of the Bhagavad Gita and they have shown us how to live through the sunny and stormy times of life in this world, how to live true bhakti. This year, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada boarding the Jaladuta. It's a very special year. Srila Prabhupada was living in Vrindavan, the place of Rasa Lila, eternally, Radha Damodar temple. He was preparing for his mission. It was a mission of compassion. People go to Vrindavan when they're old so that they could die in a holy place. Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan when he was old so he could save all of us from death. He left when he was just on the verge of 70 years. He went to Bombay. There he begged Sumati Maharaji, a simple lady, give me ticket on your cargo ship, because he had no money, no means. Finally, he was so persistent, she gave him ticket. He took a train, very slow train. He went to Mayapur, begged for the blessings of his Guru Maharaj. Then he went to Shantipur and begged for the blessings of Lord Chaitanya and Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu. Then he went to Calcutta. And it was such an impossible mission. No one took him seriously. They took him, they knew he was serious, but they considered it's impossible. It wasn't like there was a big festival with people having kirtan when he got on Jaladuta. There were only 5 people that came. I think 4 of them worked for the steamship company. And the other was his youngest son, Vrindavan Chandra Day. That was it. The others were coming simply officially to see him off. And his son, he really didn't understand why my father's doing this. It's a very special time. Srila Prabhupada, he lived to show us how to be totally absorbed in Krishna, in loving Krishna, through being compassionate to all living beings. And Krishna is the controller of all controllers. Why did he have heart attacks, seasickness? Krishna could have made it a nice voyage. Because we're all tested with so many challenges in life. And there's so many nice philosophies that teach us how matra sparashastu kondeya sitosna sukadukama tamsta dikshashvabharata. There's the winter and the summer seasons and we should tolerate them and not be disturbed. But when we see a devotee going through the challenges of life and how they apply those principles, then only can we actually understand. So Srila Prabhupada taught the whole world the perfection of pure devotion through his intimate, loving devotee, Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada, he expected his disciples to teach the world by following in his footsteps. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. He was a very unique personality in so many ways. What he went through in his life is such a beautiful example for us to learn from. While most of the devotees who were joining in the Western world were coming from middle class or upper middle class or upper class families, it was mostly the counterculture that joined our movement in the 1960s and 70s. The counterculture were people from usually quite affluent families who had ideological, revolutionary differences from their parents and the government and everything, and they kind of rejected everything and couldn't find what they were looking for until they met Srila Prabhupada. Then they gave their hearts and their lives to serve him. Bhakti Tirtha Swami didn't fit in that mold. He was born in complete poverty. Being African American in the 1950s, no civil rights. If you're born in the ghetto, you live in the ghetto, you die in the ghetto. There was no freedom. Constitutionally, there was freedom, but socially, there was no freedom. And he was brought up in such a violent environment. He told me in his elementary school that he went to, every male would carry a loaded gun. It's the only way to survive. These are like 12, 13-year-old boys. He said the only way to not be crushed is you have to show someone your loaded gun, and then they show you their loaded gun, and then you respect each other. And then you don't hurt each other. That kind of environment. But yet his mother was such a religious lady. And he told me he couldn't speak properly. He had this stammering, like da 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 da. The only time he wouldn't stammer is when he preached from the Bible. But somehow or other, he had so many obstacles in his life. He wasn't able to speak in ways that people could understand him well. He's from the ghettos. But he had such determination to do good for the world. He got a full scholarship to Princeton University. In the 1960s, Princeton University was not a place for African American people. It was mostly the really wealthy people from the southern states, their children. And he became a civil rights leader. He met Martin Luther King and challenged him. He graduated. He had such an incredible career before him. But he wanted to do something for the world. And we just heard this wonderful narration where he was seeking a guru and he was learning about spiritual sciences. There's so much to be said about that era. Because in a country where there was such a prominence of certain religions, but there was so much persecution, discrimination, and hate towards somebody because of the color of their skin. And people in the name of God were burning the houses of people with dark skin and killing them. It's hard to accept that religion. But he was looking for the essence. And ultimately, he found that essence in Srila Prabhupada. And I remember he told me that in one of his first meetings with Srila Prabhupada, I don't think he had yet joined the temple. He was just visiting. He said, Srila Prabhupada, you're teaching about the equality of everyone on the spiritual platform, that we're all souls. But within your temples, among your devotees, there is prejudice and racism. Because actually, except for a few devotees, nobody knew how to deal with them because there was nobody else like him. And due to their past conditionings, they looked at him inferior. And he could sense it because he spent his whole life going through that. He said, Prabhupada, among your devotees, there is racism. Srila Prabhupada could see the sincerity of this man's heart. And Prabhupada responded, if you are affected by the way they treat you, then what makes you any better than them? Now that's not the kind of sympathetic answer most people are looking for. But he was so sincere. If he's not forgiving, if he's against them because they don't like him, then he's just like them. So he took the difficulties he was having within the Hare Krishna movement as an opportunity to really go deep into what Srila Prabhupada was teaching. What does it really mean to be a Vaishnava? You see, in his situation, you couldn't just be a stereotyped Hare Krishna. He could only survive if he went really, really deep, and he did, and he surrendered from the very beginning. He saw Srila Prabhupada's example. How Prabhupada was such a loving, compassionate person, and he was such a dynamic activist. Prabhupada wanted to change people's lives, and he wanted to change the world. And disciples like Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj gave their lives to help. There are so many very well-known stories. Here in London, one of the most intimate exchanges in the history of our movement took place between Srila Prabhupada and His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. Because at that time, Srila Prabhupada was very much stressing book distribution. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was selling sets of books all over America in the colleges. And then he went to the former Soviet Union, to countries where it was completely illegal. Or if you were found even with a book, you could be punished and put in prison. And he was going with boxes of books and going to the universities trying to convince professors to teach it to their students. Quite courageous. And the kinds of adventures he went through, because of he was so enthusiastic and he was so fearless and he was so compassionate. He would write down the stories of his adventures and send letters to Srila Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada would read them, even during his last months in this world, he said, this is the medicine that keeps me alive. Ganasham's letters. Tamal Krishna Goswami would, as soon as he would get a letter, he would read it to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada would have him read it again and again, and if special guests would come to Prabhupada's room, he would have Tamal Krishna Goswami read Ghanshyam's letter to them. So special. And for Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, even though he was risking his life, and again, he was just a hair away from being put in prison and probably tortured and maybe killed. And it wasn't like he could be undercover. Because in the 1970s, in the former Soviet Union, there were hardly any African people. You know, for the rest of us, we could just like put a little hat on and put some pants on, and we look like everyone else, and we're just... But Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he couldn't do that. He really stood out. As soon as somebody saw the color of his skin, it's like, what are you doing here? But that did not distract him. That did not discourage him. For him, there was no impediment that can come between him and Srila Prabhupada's loving service. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us to risk our lives to assist him. He didn't care whether he lived or died. He just wanted to serve. And he did. And he got such outstanding results, and he was so focused. He told me during that time, it was very difficult for anyone to be his partner. Because he would only sleep a couple hours, and he would practically eat nothing, and he would just be out and out and out. He would wake up early in the morning, he would chant his rounds so attentively, so intensely, because he knew, I must get my power from Prabhupada through the holy name. And he would be going to so many places and so many difficulties. He told me one time in Mayapur, the people of that party, the library party, were speaking, what are we going to do with this Ghanshyam? Nobody could work with him. He's just too intense. Not intense of being mean or impolite, just he never stops serving. So when he heard this, something happened. He was thinking, I'm getting such huge results, and Srila Prabhupada is so pleased with me for doing it. But I'm so much focused on that I'm actually hurting devotees' hearts. And then he realized, whatever I'm doing for Prabhupada, if I'm hurting the hearts of the devotees, it's not really what Prabhupada wants me to do. And he got a realization at that time that caring for the Vaishnavas is inseparable from everything we do in our Krishna consciousness. Amanina manadena. Meanwhile, his letters were going to Srila Prabhupada. He was so pleased. And when Prabhupada came to London, at a time when he couldn't even walk, he was being carried. His doctors in India said, you cannot go. And Prabhupada said, no, I want to go. And he came here. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, Ghanshyam, was somewhere in Eastern Europe, and I believe he was with Krishna Kshetra Prabhu, who's now Maharaj. And they drove for a couple days to get here to be with Prabhupada. And when Tamal Krishna Goswami found out Bhakti Tirtha Swami Ghanshyam was here, he told Srila Prabhupada, the person who's writing all those letters to you, Ghanshyam, is here. And he called him up to his room. And Srila Prabhupada sat up and embraced him He embraced Ganesham and cried. And with a choked voice, Prabhupada said, "Thank you very much. Your life is perfect." There were eyewitnesses to that. The news spread all over ISKCON. There was no internet in those days. There was no fax and stuff like that. But somehow or other the word spread. I was living on a little mountain, way away from any civilization. And I heard about it. But just a couple of weeks before His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj left this world, he wanted to tell me something that was very intimate in his heart. He said, almost everybody heard that story of Srila Prabhupada embracing me and saying my life is perfect and thanking me. But hardly anyone knows the next part. He said, it's the best part. He said, because Prabhupada gave so much affection to him. You should be like a good mother and give your child the privacy she needs. Thank you. The next day, Tamal Krishna Goswami, he really wanted to make Prabhupada happy. He called Bhakti Tirtha Swami and said, you should read your letter to him, because he just gave a new letter. It was always read by his secretary. He said, for the first time, Prabhupada could hear you personally reading your own letter. That's going to be such a historical thing. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami was so excited, I get to read my letter personally to Srila Prabhupada. And he started reading, and as soon as he started reading, Prabhupada was laying in his bed. Prabhupada started talking to someone. He stopped reading. Prabhupada didn't look at him. He was looking. And then he started reading again. Prabhupada looked in another direction. He started talking to someone else. After a few minutes, he stopped. Started reading. As soon as he started reading, Prabhupada looked at someone else and started talking. This went on for about 10 minutes. He didn't even get past the first couple sentences. Prabhupada wasn't looking at him. He wasn't listening to him. And it was really tense. Can you imagine? Tamal Krishna Goswami was like a little trembling. He said to Ganesham, he said, I think you better go. He went out of Prabhupada's bedroom. He was really shaken. But he processed what happened. He said, that was such a more intimate exchange of love with Prabhupada than when he embraced me and cried and said my life was perfect. He said that instance was so much more dear to me because Srila Prabhupada cared about me so much. He knew how much he showed his love for me the day before and how the world of devotees was recognizing me. And he wanted to protect me from false pride. So the next day he crushed me. But I know he did it out of his love and concern for me. How Srila Prabhupada taught the world through such a devotee. Sometimes we think, I want to be like Prabhupada, so I'm going to crush you. Yes, it's a truth. When so many devotees who had close relationships with Srila Prabhupada, when you hear their stories, they love to talk about being chastised by him. So sometimes we think, well, Prabhupada chastised, so I will chastise. But there's a problem. After you and me chastise, nobody talks about it as the highlight of their life. Rather, they think, well, if they're going to talk about it at all, they say, you know, what a useless thing he did to me. They get discouraged. Prabhupada encouraged. What does that mean? Prabhupada invested so much compassion, so much care, so much love in his disciples that when he chastised them, they knew it was out of love, it was out of compassion, it was out of concern. Sometimes it took a few minutes to come to that conclusion. But that's usually when it had the best effect. But that was Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. He had such faith in Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada had such confidence in him that he did that. And as His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was telling me the second part of the... When he told me the first part of the story, he was smiling. When he told me the second part, he was crying in ecstasy. After Srila Prabhupada left this world, he just wanted to do something. He wanted to do what pleased Prabhupada, to be an instrument of Prabhupada's compassion. Western Africa at that time was one of the most poverty-stricken, disease-stricken, difficult places in the world. Brahmananda Prabhu, he was Maharaj then. He would go there sometimes, and it was really difficult. But Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj felt that calling from Prabhupada. He's from African descent. He should go there and preach. And he did. And what he did in Africa is unbelievable. He completely transformed a yatra that was just barely existing into a place that was one of the most successful areas of the world of spreading Krishna consciousness. And it wasn't easy. So many diseases, so many troubles, so much poverty. And he was regularly getting death threats. And people were doing black magic and voodoo and stuff. He used to tell me stories. But he was fearless because he emulated that spirit. Didn't matter whether he lives or dies if Srila Prabhupada's pleased with him, because that's life. That's eternal life. And he wanted to do things. He wanted to reach people that we weren't reaching. You know, even in the 70s, and in the early 80s, it was mostly counterculture people coming to Krishna consciousness. He started projects in the inner city poverty ghettos to preach. He called it something urban, something. He opened up kitchens to serve prasad for free and very inexpensive in the ghettos of Washington, D.C., one of the most violent places in America, to the African American people there. And he had such an incredible effect on people's hearts. And he was going to universities. And he started his, what was the name? Applied Spiritual Technology, the Institute of Applied Spiritual Technology. Because he had a yearning to reach people's hearts. And some of the ways he was giving classes were not the standard methods, but the message was the pure message in essence. And some of the most intelligent, sincere, incredible people, by the dozens and dozens, became full-fledged Vaishnavas and surrendered their hearts by that association. And he traveled the world, South America, North America, Russia, Australia, Europe, everywhere. And everywhere he would dance and sing and preach and cared. Because of the unique background that he had and the depth of compassion for everyone, he really felt and understood people who were being mistreated, for people who there were prejudices against. For him, it wasn't theoretical. He lived it. He saw it all around him all his life. And he didn't have any grudges. He didn't have any criticisms or blames for anyone who did anything against him or his people. Rather, he processed it in such a way, I feel so deeply. How could I help people who are going through difficulties? And he gave his life to every kind of person. He just broke through every sociological human barrier and preached pure devotional service, Krishna consciousness. He danced, he chanted, he lectured, he counseled, he organized. He was brilliant, really a brilliant orator and a brilliant intelligence. But most of all, his heart was 100% totally surrendered to pleasing his Guru and Krishna. And he was 100% convinced that the way to please his Guru and Krishna was to somehow or other uplift the hearts of the devotees and uplift the hearts of the conditioned souls. ISKCON went through some really difficult trouble sometimes. And of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada that are here, and some of the earlier devotees of the second generation, we've all experienced the pains and the sufferings of those times. Betrayal and heartbreak and disappointment and not being given proper facility to grow was happening. And he went through it himself. In many ways, more than anybody. On so many levels. But he didn't hold anything against anyone. He just wanted to make a positive difference. And as he traveled the world, I remember he used to tell me, because we would meet often, he would say, if we want to spread this movement, the devotees we have to be happy. We have to have a community of happy devotees. Otherwise, we're preaching philosophy, and then they come to our temples and communities, and they think, my God, I have to really use this philosophy to live here. It should be that the community and the devotees isn't meant to, the philosophy helps us overcome the association. It's supposed to actually be a manifestation of our philosophy. So he really tried. And I would see him. He would go to remote parts of the world in order to inspire, encourage, and uplift the Vaishnavas. And so many times, people who had been hurt, he would just give so much of his time and energy because he knew that Prabhupada would want that. And at a certain point, he wrote it in his Vyas Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada. Vasudev Dutt. Vasudev Dutt was a devotee of Lord Chaitanya who was most dear to the Lord. Lord Chaitanya would say about Vasudev Dutt, I am Vasudev Dutt's man. I am his property. Wherever he wants to sell me, I am sold. I repeat, Lord Chaitanya said, I am only Vasudev Dutt's man. Why? Because Vasudev Dutt in Puri, he begged Lord Chaitanya for one blessing. He said, I know you could fulfill my one desire. I've had this desire for a long time. Please, when I see the suffering of the people of this world, it breaks my heart. Let all their sinful reactions come upon me. Let me suffer their sins perpetually and give them all liberation. When Lord Chaitanya heard this, because he was really asking for it, it wasn't like a poetic performance. Lord Chaitanya is the Paramatma in the heart. He was saying, this is really his burning wish. Lord Chaitanya cried. And with a choked voice, he said, it is not a surprise that you are saying like this, because you are Prahlad Maharaj. And Lord Chaitanya praised Vasudev Dutt. Just by your wish, Krishna has to liberate everyone. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was so inspired by that story for so many years. He actually prayed, let the sufferings of ISKCON come to me so that the devotees could be happy. I don't think he meant it in a literal way, but I'm not one to judge his mind. But it was a spirit. We can interpret it in all different ways. But it was his spirit that he was willing really to make a sacrifice so that devotees could be happy. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada wanted the world to understand the glory of Lord Chaitanya's message and gift. And if devotees weren't happy with it, how is the world going to actually be transformed? Soon after that, he got cancer. And recognizing his body belongs to Krishna, he tried whatever he could do to make it better. He took natural therapies. He took allopathic therapies. He had to have surgeries. But despite it all, cancer was terminal. And what was he thinking? He was thinking, how can I serve Srila Prabhupada? Whatever the situation is, it's an opportunity to serve. So devotees were saying, please come to Vrindavan, come to Mayapur. And he had so many loving disciples who would have taken care of him so nicely in those holy places. But he wanted to send a message that wherever Srila Prabhupada established a temple or a community, that was Vrindavan and Mayapur. So he said, I will leave my body in Gita Nagari. And he told me that was the reason. Because if we really want to appreciate Srila Prabhupada, we should know that wherever he established his community, that was a holy place, and we should have that faith in Prabhupada's mercy. He was surrounded by such loving devotees. And that love was reciprocal. He gave his life for them. And their greatest honor was to give their life to him. That is bhakti. There was a festival of inspiration in New Vrindavan. And many, many hundreds and hundreds of people from all over America, devotees, guests were there. And I was there, and there was a main lecture Sunday morning that I was supposed to give. It was actually Sunday in the early afternoon. I was scheduled. And Saturday night, I got a call from Prajalila Devi. And she said, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj wants to talk to you. So I got on the phone, and he said, my doctors tell me I only have 3 more days to live. I'd be very grateful if I could see you. I said, I'm coming. So I went to Anuttama Prabhu, who was organizing the festival. And I said, I have to go to visit Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He only has 3 days. He said, but all these people have come to hear you. I said, doesn't matter. So he said, what if I change you from the afternoon to the morning, the first session, and then you go? I said, I don't want to interfere with your schedule. He said, no, please. I said, okay. So it's right in the middle of the festival. So I gave a class. I don't know what I talked about. It wasn't very interesting, probably. But then at the end, I said, I have to leave immediately because His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj only has a few days. And I left that place immediately, and I got in my car. One of my godbrothers, Mahamuni Prabhu, was with me. And we drove away, and I happened to look in the rearview mirror, and there were dozens and dozens of cars right behind. There was about 150 people that left the festival to go to Gita Nagari. It's like a 6-hour drive. The first day I was there, there were all these devotees from all over America and all over the world. And I know many of them. Some of them were really, really enthusiastic, and others were really bitter people who really lost faith. Some second generation, some first generation, some from the Gurukul generation. And we were all crowded in his room. And he was sitting on a little chair. He only had one leg. He had tumors all over his body. He was emaciated. He was speaking with such conviction and such compassion and such blissfulness. I looked around in that room. Every single person, there's probably 50, 60 people crowded in his little room. Everyone was weeping. Everyone was gazing upon him with such reverence and affection. Whatever he was saying, I could actually see every word he was speaking. They were having such intense emotional reactions to his words. They were accepting and being transformed. I had never in my life seen anything like this. It was incredible. And after his talk, everyone came out of the room. I came out with them. And people who were really having serious issues with leadership, they were saying, my life has changed forever. I went back in the room. I said, Maharaj, how did you do that? I've known you for 35 years. I've never seen you have that effect on people. I've seen you get people to dance and convince people to join our movement and inspire devotees, but I've never seen that before. You completely conquered every person's heart. And he smiled. He said, you see, having the cancer is such a blessing. Because I have cancer and I'm about to die, that's why they're listening to me so carefully. No other time in my life did people listen to me like this. He said, I've given my life to uplift people. If my having cancer and going through all the dying stages of cancer is going to help these devotees, then I consider it Prabhupada's blessing to me. Because I'm just here to serve. And never have I had a chance and the capacity to serve as I have now. That was Bhakti Tirtha Swami. The next morning I had to leave because I had some lecture at a college somewhere later that day. And I had meetings and I had a whole summer of schedule. And I went to his room to say goodbye. He told me he only had 2 more days to live. So I went to say my last goodbye to him. But he spoke before I spoke. So much of my life would be different if I spoke first. He said, I want to die in your arms, stay with me. That kind of disoriented me. I was thinking, there's all these colleges and universities and meetings and programs and temples. But I was thinking, he only has 2 days to live. I said, Maharaj, I will stay with you as long as you're living. He said, thank you. We embraced. He lived 8 weeks. But it was really interesting because every day we thought that would be the day he would leave. So it was very intense. Every time we met, we were very convinced this is probably going to be the last time we meet. And I would go to his room, and he would lay on his bed, or sometimes I would pick him up and put him on a chair, and I would just be sitting next to him. And we had a wonderful tradition. As soon as I came in, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he made a rule. No one else was allowed in the room. You remember? She was one of the caretakers. He wouldn't allow any tape recorders, what to speak of videos. And all of his caretakers had to leave and close the door, because it was just going to be two godbrothers speaking. And we would begin each day by reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We would read the prayer that Madhavendra Puri offered to Krishna in the mood of Sri Radha as he was leaving this world. When he was bedridden, he couldn't walk, Ishwara Puri was cleaning his urine and stool from his body. And when he was in that situation, he was offering a beautiful prayer. The prayer that Sri Radharani offered to Krishna when he had left for Mathura. Expressing her broken heart that Krishna was away. The sweetest mood of surrender. And Lord Chaitanya, who was Krishna in the mood of Sri Radha, considered that to be the crest jewel of all prayers. And he would repeat it again and again, and sometimes dance and cry when he was in Remuna. So we would recite that prayer and then simply discuss that prayer for usually 1 to 3 hours every day. But the discussion went in so many directions. But he said, as long as we're talking, because every discussion we have could be the last one of my life. Our only purpose is to help each other to go deeper and deeper in loving Prabhupada and Krishna and the Vaishnavas. We would share realizations. We would share concerns. We would speak stories, pastimes, teachings. It was so deep. In those 8 weeks, I can't remember a single time when any sentence of our discussion diverted ourselves from really trying to help each other to go deeper into loving devotional service. And something happened. Something beautiful. We both realized what a gift Prabhupada gave us in sharing Krishna consciousness with each other without ulterior motives. There is the deepest experience of love for each other, for Prabhupada, and for Krishna. It was actually, as my dear god sister would say, mystical. Or Krishna's magic. It's incredible. I remember one time we were having a discussion and he just smiled. He was laying in his bed. He said, "Maharaj, we are there." And I said, "Where?" He said, "We are there." And I said, "Where?" He said, "We are in the spiritual world." And then he explained, and he was really, Ananda, he was really happy. He said, "What do they do in the spiritual world? Everyone just reminds each other about Krishna. We're reminding each other about Krishna. That means we're not in this material world. We are in the spiritual world right now." he was there. I was kind of seeing, but he was there. It was incredible. Machchita madgatapana bodhyanta parasparam katiyantaschamam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. Devotees are surrendered to Krishna's will, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss discussing Krishna and sharing with one another. And after he said this to me, tears rolled out of his eyes, and he said, "This is the gift that Srila Prabhupada has given us." He's given us each other to focus exclusively on helping each other to remember Krishna. One day he told me a beautiful story because he kept living physically. Of course, the soul's eternal. And everybody was expecting today he will go. I remember it was Narsingha Chaturdasi. Shakti, you were there on that day? And we were already together for quite a while. And he said, "This will be a very auspicious day for me to go." So he went to the temple. There was a large crowd of devotees in the temple that day. People were coming from all directions because they heard that Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj was going to come to the temple. And he really loved Lord Narsingha Dev. He had like a walking stick with Narsingha Dev. Before his talk, I was sitting next to him. He started chanting this kirtan. Now he had no strength. He had no energy. He was emaciated. But he led this kirtan with such force, with such intensity. It's like every drop of his entire being was being offered in this kirtan. And he kept chanting for a long, long time. And I understood. He really wanted to die in that kirtan. He was going beyond himself, chanting, 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 because he wanted to die in front of the deities of Radha Damodar with all the devotees around him. On Narsingha Chaturdasi, he was chanting, chanting, chanting. And then after, chanted for about an hour or something. He hadn't done that in a long, long time. And then he turned to me and he whispered, I wanted to die, but Krishna's not letting me die. And then he gave a little lecture. And I remember one day, I said, it's Mukunda Dutt's appearance day, or disappearance. That's the brother of Vasudev Dutt. And he started crying. He said, Vasudev Dutt, this is an auspicious day to go. So he invited everybody from the community to come to his room to chant. And everyone was around his bed chanting, chanting for hours and hours. And then he stopped them. He said, I thought I was going to go today, but Krishna's not taking me, so you could all go back to your service. He was very enthusiastic. But one day he told me, he said, I know why Krishna's not taking me yet. I've told this story many times, but it's special to me. The love between God brothers, God sisters, in Krishna's loving service. He said, Tamal Krishna Goswami would be the one to read my letters to Srila Prabhupada. He's the one who brought me to meet Srila Prabhupada when Prabhupada embraced me. He's the one who brought me to meet Srila Prabhupada when he embraced me really tightly the second time. He said, so I always felt a connection that he would love to take me to see Srila Prabhupada. He said, Tamal Krishna Goswami appeared to me in a dream. How many of you have heard this dream? Raise your hand. I'll tell it anyway, so you could raise your hand. How many have not heard the dream? I will tell the dream. He said Tamal Krishna Goswami appeared to him and he was crying. Tamal Krishna Goswami was crying pathetically. And then he told Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Srila Prabhupada is calling for you. I've come to tell you, he's calling you to serve him in another place. He said, Srila Prabhupada also called for me. And when I left the world to join Prabhupada, I know how much my disciples, my well-wishers, and my friends, how broken-hearted they were and how they cried when I left. And I'm crying now because I could feel for all your followers, your friends, and your disciples, their hearts are going to break like mine did. But Prabhupada's calling for you, so you have to come. And then Tamal Krishna Goswami said, but before you go, I'm going to come to see you again. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he said, this dream happened some time back. He said, Tamal Krishna Goswami has not come back to see me. That's why I'm not going. And then one day, just after this, because there was nothing that he would speak that I would speak to anyone else. It was completely private. Just after this, we get a phone call that Tamal Krishna Goswami's pujari from Dallas had a dream. This is what I remember. That Tamal Krishna Goswami wanted his deities, his personal deities of Radha Govinda, whatever their name, Radha Damodar, his little deities, that they go to give darshan to Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So the pujari came with a few others, and they set up the altar in Bhakti Tirtha Swami's bedroom. Just in the next room, actually, just outside his bedroom. And the devotees put him on a little wheelchair and brought him in, and he had darshan. And right next to the deities was a little photo of Tamal Krishna Goswami. And he said, he's come just like he promised. And one day, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj said to Brajalila and Ekavir, I want to take a walk. Take me for a walk. He only had one leg. And he was really, he couldn't even sit up without somebody picking him up. They said, but you can't walk. He said, no, I want to take a walk. And they were really confused. So they came to me and they said, Guru Maharaj wants us to take him for a walk, but he can't walk. We don't know what to do. So I went in the room and I said, Maharaj, would you like to do Govardhan Parikrama today? He said, yes, I want to do Govardhan Parikrama. So I asked Brajalila, you have a Govardhan Shila, let's set up a little table in the middle of the room. And she set up a little table, and he had this special, it wasn't a wheelchair, he had that, but he had a special thing that would it was just like standing up, but it had wheels. So one foot would be on the floor. So it was like he was standing up. It was just taken to the bathroom and stuff like that. So we put him on that, and we brought him out, and everybody in the community came. Were you there that day? And we called everybody. We're doing Govardhan Parikrama. And all these devotees came from all over Gita Nagari. There wasn't that many. And we were doing parikrama, and he was going around Govardhan Hill, and we were having kirtan and kirtan and kirtan, and then he said, "We have done Govardhan Parikrama." That was such an intimate, beautiful event. It was actually videoed. And one story that moved me very, very profoundly. Sometimes the pain he was experiencing was so intense. One day especially was close to his last day. He was sitting on a chair, and I was sitting next to him. And I started reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhavendra Puri's prayer. But his whole body was trembling with pain. And I could feel that he couldn't really focus on what I was saying. So I just held his hand and chanted the Mahamantra. And he squeezed my hand and chanted the Mahamantra. And then something wonderful happened. He smiled with such effulgence, with such joy. And his eyes literally lit up. They were radiant, sparkling. And it was one of those kind of smiles that it was almost like both sides of his mouth were going into his ears. It was such a smile. He lit up the room. And then he shook his head. And tears, not tears of pain, tears of joy, pouring from his eyes. It was just the two of us. And he shook his head. He squeezed my hand and said, "It doesn't get any better than this." He said it over and over again. The amazing thing is the pain was still the same. The trembling of his limbs was still the same. He was saying, "It doesn't get any better than this." And I asked him to explain. And he did. He said, "I am tasting the sweetness of Krishna's names, in Radha's names, like I have never tasted before. I am so happy. I am so grateful." He said, "I know where I'm going. And I'm so grateful to be going there." And he meant it. Srila Prabhupada told us we should cry for like a baby in a helpless condition for the help of the mother. That's the way he was crying in ecstasy. When he did leave the world, devotees from all around America were assembled in a group around his bed. It was just perfect. Srila Prabhupada taught us that Krishna shows us how to live and how to die through the example of his loving devotees. Shukadeva Goswami tells that better one moment of full consciousness than a long, long, long life wasted in material pursuits. Prabhupada taught us the story of Maharaj Katvanga. He attained the supreme perfection of life in one moment by surrendering his heart to Krishna. We have with us today our beloved god sister Ragini Devi. Today's the first time in my life I've met her. But by Prabhupada's grace, we have a family that even if you meet for the first time, within seconds you realize you're lifelong friends if you've known each other forever. Because we've all been serving the same person, the same mission, and we have the same gratitude. It's really a wonderful family. If only we could focus on that and not be so disturbed with all the little things that happen. But Ragini Devi, who came in the early 70s to Srila Prabhupada, a very difficult background she had. She had many tests and difficulties in her life and was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I received a beautiful, by Mandakini Devi's grace, she gave her my email address, and I received an incredible letter. A letter like I've never gotten in my life. And it culminates with how grateful she is for the blessing of getting this cancer. Because she could feel Prabhupada bringing her back, Krishna bringing her back in such a special way. And when I read her letter, I was thinking in my heart, I remember, and this is true, how Bhakti Tirtha Swami, if he was with us today, how much he would be so enthusiastic and grateful to encourage Ragini Devi and enthuse her for coming back to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. And it's so special that she came today. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj is really with all of us today in our hearts and our love and our gratitude and our appreciation. No matter who we are, life is short. It has been 50 years since Srila Prabhupada arrived in America. Dhananjaya Prabhu is one of the earliest devotees. And it seems like yesterday, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj left this world 10 years ago. And it really seems like just a few days ago, doesn't it? But still, we've aged 10 years, however it feels. And that means we're 10 years closer to death. But if we're really grateful to Prabhupada and Krishna, and we're chanting the holy names and hearing about Krishna with enthusiasm, we're actually 10 years closer to eternal life. My father is 91 years old. And I was saying today, his best friend is Shyam Sundar Prabhu. He calls him that young boy. He's about 71. To my father, he's a young boy. He treats me like I'm still a baby. But everything is relative. But when he talks about his childhood, he says, He says, it seems like yesterday. He talks about when I was born. He says, it just seems like a couple days ago. I'm 64 years old. So that's the way life is. It passes fast. But every moment is precious. And we learn from someone like Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. He may not have lived a long, long time, but that didn't matter to him. The quality of his surrender, this quality of his devotion to his Guru and Krishna. It is our prayer that it lasts forever within the hearts of people who hear about him. And for all of us who have gathered together to remember him. He inspired today, and whenever people come together in his honor, to really go deeply into what is the true essence of devotional service. Thank you very much.
Radhanath Swami Maharaj ki jai. Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I think he would like us to dance.
Yes, I was going to request lead a kirtan, please, Maharaj.
If you order me, I'll obey.
I'm ordering you in the politest way possible.
He would love to see devotees dance. So please, in his honor, let us dance and chant with great feeling. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote on the Samadhi Mandir of Srila Haridas Thakur a historical poem. One line of that poem is especially relevant to our occasion today. He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die, when thou art living still in sound. Vaishnavas die to live, and live to spread the holy name around. Everyone, on behalf of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, from our hearts, let us offer our prayers for Ragini Devi. That Krishna's blessings shower upon her forevermore. And we offer this kirtan. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj would want us to offer this kirtan for our beloved Ragini Devi. So let us chant in this spirit. What greater act of gratitude we can offer to a great soul than to do his will. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone, please.